Let's go to the one point, the one competition that athletes point to because they only have one chance in their lifetime, the Olympic Games. Your entire training for the previous 10, 20 years gets condensed to maybe 10 to 10 seconds to maybe 2 minutes. At that one point in time and space, all your hormones have to be peaked hormonally, or all have to be peaked. In the Olympic Games, all the athletes are genetically gifted. They all train hard. They all have good coaches, but they don't all win. It's those whose hormones were peaked at that point in time and space are the likely winners. So we started working with elite athletes starting in the early 90s, primarily at Stanford, with swimmers. And these were the swimmers, not all the kids at Stanford bought into the program, but the ones who didn't basically won 7 gold medals in the 1992 Olympics, including Pablo Morales, who had not swum for the previous 3 years. He'd been in law school. But he came back out of law school and he won 2 gold medals at a fairly advanced age. 1996, more swimmers, volleyball, track and field. 2000, Dara Torres is interesting. She had swum in the 1992 Olympics and then spent the next 8 years being a model. She came back in 2002 and started working out the Stanford swimmers and asked the coach, "Coach, what are my chances of making the team?" He said, "Slim and none. But tell you, if you follow the program and take the fish shows, you might have an outside chance." Well, she made the team and basically won 2 gold medals at a very advanced age, swimming at this case it was age 34, which is like playing NBA basketball at 65. And then we had a lot more Olympics in the 2004, including Valentina Vasily, who basically was at that time won her 3rd Olympic championship in fencing, and fencing is purely a reaction sport. And what's the first thing that decreases as you age as an athlete? Your reaction times are not as good. So to be winning a gold medal at age 34 in the Olympics is a pretty remarkable feat. But as I showed you earlier, if you follow the diet, the zone diet, and if you take high enough levels of fish oil, your reaction times are significantly increased. One of my favorite teams in the 2004 Olympics was the Italian national basketball team. You can see these guys here. They are not very imposing. In fact, most of them would have a hard time making a Division II team in America. But they were so bad, so pathetic, they came to our Italian partner and said, "Help us." They said, "We'll help you if you change your diet." And they did. And to everyone's amazement, they finished 3rd in the European Championships to qualify them for the 2004 Olympics. Massive celebrations in Italy. Of course, everything's a reason for massive celebrations in Italy. But they went to the Olympics, and the week before the Olympics started, they played the Americans in an exhibition game. The Americans were consisting of the world's best basketball players, all NBA All-Stars. And this team beat them by 20 points. And the Olympics, they finished 2nd, and the Americans finished 3rd. And then in the 2008, well, now here's Valentina again. But now she's 38 years old. So when I met Valentina about 6 months before the 2008 Olympics, she says, "I need a secret weapon again." So we said, "Okay, we got some new things we can work with you that basically will allow you to get even more, advanced." And there she is at age 38, winning a purely reaction sport for her 4th Olympic gold medal. And then we can take basically pro endurance athletes. Dean Karnazes is an interesting one. Here's Dean right here. As you can see, he doesn't look like a marathon runner. He actually looks good in running shorts. But Dean Karnazes is the world's greatest ultra-marathon runner. What's an ultra-marathon? 100 miles or more. Dean likes to work at the 100 to 200 mile mark. And Dean was basically voted best outdoor athlete in 2007, runner of the year 2006. Well, here's a quote from Dean. "I've been a personal acquaintance of Dr. Sears for years and was an early adapter of zone nutrition. I've followed the principles of the zone diet regimen over the last decade and believe that has helped me perform better and to feel better overall." Let's go back and look at Dean again. It's saying, you know, most athletes say, I like to look this good at age 43, but how do you do it? It says, easy. You follow the zone diet. Oh, by the way, I run 300-mile marathons. And they say, I thought the athletes had to eat lots of carbohydrates. So are you kidding? You know, so if I did, I'd never win. Let's take another tough sport that most athletes don't like to talk about because it basically requires a lot of ability. It's easy to run. It's relatively easy to bike. But to run, bike, and swim, that's hard work. And that's why triathletes are kind of on this pedestal of saying the ultimate athletes, other than the ones who run 300-mile marathons. Well, here's some of the athletes we've worked with over the years. Becky Laval, the Triathlete of the Year in 2008. Lisa Bentley, Triathlete of the Year 2003. Julie Swile-Erdo, of the national champion. Why do we work with them? Because it gives them a unique advantage over their competitors. And isn't that what every athlete is looking for? And then pro golfers. This is one of ours, Michelle McGann, who's an 8-time PGA champion. That's impressive enough in its own right, but Michelle is also a type 1 diabetic. You know, it's very, very hard to perform as an elite athlete as a type 1 diabetic because your blood sugar levels are running all over the spectrum. But that's why the zone diet was developed. Not to lose weight, but to treat diabetes and cardiovascular disease. AC Milan, before we started working with them, in Europe you have to report all drug usage, which includes anti-inflammatory drugs. They were an older team, and therefore they had the highest drug usage in European soccer. The next year, once they started using the fish oil and following the diet, they became the lowest user of anti-inflammatory drugs in European soccer. Or how about pro cycling? This is Team Garmin-Chipotle. As most of you know, that cycling has been basically devastated by doping scandals. Why? Doping of hormones works. It gives you an unfair advantage. And they want to set a stage to say a team that basically is drug-free, and they test their riders for drugs about once a week. So we can compete, but we need an unfair advantage. So they came to us. We started working with them. These are the riders who are riding in the Tour de France, and Christian Vandevelde basically was the 5th place finisher. Now here's what their team chiropractor and nutritionist said. Blood studies that the Zone Labs did on our riders prior to the Tour de France were essential to dial in the exact amounts of fish oils as well as to make specific dietary recommendations for each rider. This is a team that was put together just prior to the Tour de France. The other teams have been together for 10, 15, 20 years, and yet they're able to compete very effectively because they had an unfair advantage. We were basically now modifying the hormones of each of the riders naturally, simply by the foods they eat, to allow them to compete at their peak levels. Here's my ultimate pro team, the B2 Bomber Command. And you could probably care less about cycling or soccer, but you want to make sure the B2 Bomber Command is working at peak efficiency. And there I am with the B2 Bomber, and I was allowed actually to work in the simulation of the cabin. They're in the flight for 44 hours. 1, they have to stay awake, and 2, they have to have mental acuity. The zone diet and the fish oil gives them both. So here we have 21st century sports medicine. It could be regular medicine or sports medicine, it doesn't matter. It's going to boil down to who can basically control the hormones the best. And diet, in my opinion, will be the primary drug, not injections of growth hormone, not injections of anabolic steroids, not injections of testosterone. Simply treating your food like a drug. And high-dose fish oil will be a key component. And if you do all this, you return to the beginnings of modern medicine with Hippocrates, when he said, let food be your medicine, and let medicine be your food. It seems so simple. What's happening in your body is incredibly complex. But to access that complexity doesn't require much effort, other than having one hand and one eye. And so let me finalize the lecture by this slide. It's saying, if I'd only known this 40 years ago, when I was a pretty good volleyball player, I could have been probably a lot better volleyball player. But this is myself here. Time basically takes its rigors. This is my close friend who's now the head coach at the University of Minnesota volleyball team. We've been working with them for many years, but he's the winningest coach, one of the winningest coaches of all times. And John here, he didn't go on to athletics or diet, but he became the head of imaging at Kodak. We weren't a bad team. We could have been a lot better team if we'd only known.